Me again. You're making a response video to this inventive harvest guy who, nice enough guy, I suppose, but, just irritating. So this is sort of this argument I want to make that these people, it's like the quantum thing. It's like, physics went on this, they have a couple of, two, three experiments at the most, little kind of wacky phenomenon happens, and all of a sudden they completely flip their perception, their understanding of how something works. So they came up, because of this stupid two-slit nonsense. All of a sudden now, photons that had no character before, that basically did just one thing, went from point A to point B in a straight line and then crashed into point B, didn't interact with anything except electrons. All of a sudden they became superheroes. They were flying all over the universe. They're bouncing off Mars and flying over there, doing this and doing that, and they go up my butt and fly out my mouth. Just complete nonsense. Because of some one little defect, one little, we can't quite explain exactly what's happening there. All of a sudden now, doors open, God exists. And that's what they do. This is what human beings do, and it's just so it's so obvious, been doing it forever, historically. We should already know this is the tendency of people, is just to jump on the wacky bandwagon, right? Somebody knocks down, somebody, smashes some wheat down in patterns in a wheat field one day as a joke. And, for a decade, people are talking about the magical UFOs that are drawing on Earth. Truther theories all over the place, right? 9/11 was an inside job because, and the answers are always stupid, of course, but whatever, because building 94 fell down 2 seconds too slowly. Instead of trying to find the true explanation for the fact that you have a circumstance that needs explaining, like two-slit experiment, needs explaining, but they just grab like anything that looks like a god, they grab that first. So anyway, he's, I should play his videos and do the note thing, but I figure he's doing the note thing, so I shouldn't have to do the note thing. And, there's a certain value to taking this on as it comes and just seeing if I can explain off the top of my head why, that's bullshit. Why are you wasting time with that nonsense? Because if you really thought about that, you'd figure out why that's just bullshit. That's a standard. And so subjectivism, right on its face, he's using the word subjective in here, so I guess he's a subjectivist. This idiotic notion that there isn't an explicit truth to this crap, this world we live in. There's a real world. You can accurately describe it or inaccurately describe it, but there's no subjective. There's no equally true contradictory realities. So the minute I say it's blue and you say it's red, one of us is right, one of us is wrong, or we're both fucked. But those are the choices. There is no, we're both right. No.
Talk about, how much certainty can we get versus how much is it always going to be subjective. Inmendham does not like subjectivism, right? I mean, that's...
how much certainty we can get, I'm just, frankly, right? Yeah, I'm saying it's all there already. It's all, we already have the evidence of our existence. We already know evolution pretty forward and backward. We got the human genome and all that crap. We know the dynamic. We know that everything falls into the rules of the dynamic. And yeah, if you found one kind of curious thing, that just, wow, that's just too weird. It's an organism that reproduces in some manner where you just can't figure out exactly why it was to its advantage to do that. But you could know, all right, there's probably an explanation. Just like you could know that photons aren't thinking or driving, that they're being driven. They have to interact with something real in the environment to be motivated to not do what they were doing, which is going from point A to point B. And that it's the something else that did it. Just like if something else, well anyway, I'm just saying that this is just not, if people were at all fair, and and it all not reaching and grasping desperately for unicorn magic, this conversation would not be this tedious and irritating.
Obvious, right? He doesn't like the indeterminism, um, especially here, right? He's accusing of that the goalposts are always changing, and that's unfair if you don't know where the goalpost is. Um,
Yeah, well, why don't you deal with the real accusation being made that that's what they want? They want to have a conversation in an atmosphere where if they kick the ball foul, all of a sudden they say that's where the goalposts are. That foul ball I just hit, that's a home run. Yeah, yeah. How you can't play baseball that right way, right? If the guy hits a foul ball and he all of a sudden gets to say, "Well, that's where the home run fence is, where I just hit that ball." Obviously, that's not a game anymore. That's silly.
It gets to the point, like I completely sympathize with inmendham here, right? It gets to the point where change the rules so much that words don't even mean anything anymore, right? I sometimes say this is, what, can we not say Socrates is a man anymore? Like, you get so many rules that are, when you get rules that contradict each other.
Yeah, well, that's according to Pyro, you can't. Yeah.
Then you can't say anything, and that's part of the problem because all these rules exist. They're created from ourselves, but they're all necessary for trying to.
Well, again, that's the word where you just. This is where it all starts to go wrong. Is with when people start saying that our intelligence is something we create, when our intelligence is something we reveal and discover. We discover the truth. We don't make it up. We reveal it through the acquisition of evidence of it. Its footprint. We see the footprint and we do the logic necessary to know something stepped there.
Figure out the truth, but the truth gets complicated. We don't look at this.
See, says you. I don't really think anything meaningfully true. Whoops, I just made a boo-boo. Yeah.
Right, I mean, that's.
Jump ahead a little bit. It's going to do some TV stuff, imagine. Yeah, TV, yay. Audio visual effects.
It gets to the point, like, I completely sympathize where.
Oh, I already did that,
right? It gets to the point where.
Where's the part where he points to his TV here? Come on. I don't want to go too far.
Brought that. Here's the
okay, here we go.
Original shape, and occasionally through this video you might see the shape again, right? Where this shape has all these universes inside it, and then we'll see this shape inside those universes, making more universes, more inside the shape, inside the shape, inside the shape.
Well, whatever. Oh, there's some sort of fractal crap. Yeah, what? There's no real reduction? Is that what you're trying to argue? But I'm just saying we already know there is. Okay, we already know the universe changes as it gets smaller. It doesn't just fractal. That the actual mechanism functions differently. There might be the same force, and the same force is now completely different. I mean, I would argue that the electric and the magnetic forces are really the strong and weak forces. And so they're electric and magnetic at one level of the universe, and at another level of the universe that are strong and weak because they're dynamically and dramatically different on the scale differences. So depending on size, it's a completely different effect.
Let's get it started here.
Okay, really cool.
So there it is again, right? And then coming in to the spiral, and all it is zooming, right? Now we're down to 10 to the negative 10th scope, and we just keep zooming in.
Right, it's just a mathematical fractal, right? This is synthetic. Okay, this isn't in the real world. There's nothing in the real world that's a perfect fractal. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You will find nothing in reality that's a perfect mathematical fractal. Nothing.
Closer and closer and closer and smaller and smaller and smaller. And there's just more and more complexity. We're never getting to the end of this thing.
It's not more and more complexity. It's just variations on a theme where you maintain the exact same rules no matter how deep you go. And again, we already know that that's not on the table of reality. We already know that a molecule is different than a human body. The body's made out of molecules. We know the body's different than the cells. We know the cells are different than the molecules. We know the molecules are different than the atoms. Now, it's all the same shit. It's all made out of something, but the something it's made out of does not fractal. There is no reoccurring identical function, because as size change, force changes. So the real world has force changes, where that fake world doesn't have force changes. The forces are always proportional to the size change. That's not how reality works. So this isn't a diagram of reality. It's a diagram of synthetic imagination.
Oh, there's the shape again. Um, and then just keep going inwards and inwards and inwards. Now, there's a simple function. It's not that simple, but there's a function that describes this whole thing. And imagine being in this little part of the thing. There's an infinite amount of information in this little part. And imagine trying to...
It's not really an infinite amount of information. I mean, redundancy, saying that I'm going to multiply by 2 forever, is not really an infinite amount of information. It's just an infinite amount of redundancy. So, I mean, to call it information because you have created a redundancy isn't exactly accurate. I mean, if the entire universe was to do something like that, like say replicate, one thing was to replicate exponentially without stopping, and everything in the universe turned into, I don't know, white piece of paper. Everything just turned into white piece of paper. White. You wouldn't say when the entire universe was covered in white piece of paper that there's an infinite amount of complexity now in the universe, because it's still making more white paper. You'd just say there's a lot of white paper. It's a pretty dull universe. It's not very complex. It's very homogeneous.
Figure that out from inside there, right? And doing maybe statistics on the infinite number of data points up in here to try and figure out that original function. It's going to get all kinds of wacky paradoxes.
Yeah, again, this has nothing to do with the reality. I'm sorry, I mean, but this has nothing to do with reality. Like I said, go ahead, show me a fractal, a mathematical fractal that is somehow real in reality. Show me something in reality that works like this. No, there's nothing that works like this because there's nothing that can break the force laws. Just the truth. Nothing that's going to change the constancy of the speed of light, scale-wise.
So, we're trying to describe something as infinitely complex with simple...
No, it isn't. So, I mean, you can't, you know, this is like kind of funny just because you can't get this any fundamentally more wrong, right? The universe doesn't work on infinite complexity. It works on just a lot of stuff and very crude and simple forces. So the forces have no infinite amount of complexity. The force of gravity, the force of magnetism, electricity, you know, they're all one force in my opinion, but just take for granted if they're not, even if they weren't, those forces are not complex. They have extremely simple rules, and they do it extremely reliably and extremely without exception. But they're incredibly simple. So the rules that build a water droplet, for example, are really simple rules. So there's not an infinite amount of complexity in the dynamic that creates everything. It's just that there's a lot of stuff, so there's a lot of permutations, so every possible variation of the theme created through time, you know, each integer of time is a new time integer where things have changed subtly, and therefore now you can just redo the same thing in a new time and it becomes a new thing, so to speak. The cause and effect chain is infinite, but the things being, the way they're being caused and affected is simple. Yeah, that might be a way to say it, right? The chain is infinite. The links are but ugly simple.
Stuff. And it just gets wacky. That's just how it is. It's not that
I don't believe that's true. There, leave it at that. It's not how it is.
Goals are changing. It's just that there's so many goalposts, right? Um,
I don't even know what that means, but no, there aren't.
you know, it seems unfair. Like, oh, we can't even say anything. But what we're describing is
Yes, we can say lots of things, and it has nothing to do with fairness. It has to do with goddamn fucking delusional mush made up by people and wishful thinking and delusional thinking. If you look at the damn thing fairly, you can figure out that what runs it, the gasoline, isn't that complicated.
existence, and existence is unfair. Um,
I don't know, you're mixing an awful lot of subjects here. I don't even know why you're bringing up the word fairness, because that's a whole different concept.
so the best we can do is what Pyro and
Oh, fuck you. The best we can do is pretend we don't. If we don't like a truth, we just throw it in the garbage. If we don't like the evidence, just throw it in the garbage. Oh yeah, that's the best we can do. That's not even close to the best. And I think it's pretty close to the worst we could do. Yeah. Way to get it. Way to get that one totally wrong. Bah! Got that question wrong.
talking about with making generalizations of, you know, we can kind of approximate some truth. We can't know specifically to an nth degree exactly how much, but we can make some generalizations.
Oh, bullshit. Again, we know what's not going to happen. We know the old pig ain't going to fly. So, you know, why play this game? We know there are rigid frickin' rules. You're just not going to break them in any general way. And the only way you're going to break them is in some apparent way that will have explanation. And you did not, in fact, break them. So if I create something that appears to be anti-gravity, right, there's going to be a reason it behaves the way it does. It's not going to be unexplainable. It will be explainable. And it's just acquisition of the information necessary to make the explanation. It's no magic, buddy. It's cause and effect universe. Fact.
And provisionally agree to those generalizations. That's very different than saying words have no meaning. It's like words have provisional meaning. It's a different.
Whatever. Like I said, they don't have to have any of that, though. It can be rather explicit. There's certain words that have just flat-out explicit meaning, to-ness and that so forth. It's explicit. There's no condition. They don't have to have conditional meaning. We could have much better words than silly words like love and hate. That don't really describe a consistent emotional feeling between people that are provoked by different circumstances among people. We don't have to use sloppy words. We could have actual more explicit language and use more explicit words. We don't have to have words in our vocabulary like spontaneous when we know there is no such thing. And we certainly know that everything that's ever been described as spontaneous wasn't spontaneous. I mean, if spontaneous exists, we haven't found it.
Thing. It's not saying that words have more meaning when I say them than when you say them. It's just.
That's not the point. The point is words have no meaning if you're allowed to say, I don't like where this argument's going, so now I'm going to redefine language to evade it. That, catch-22, okay, that idea that I will now, after we've already started the conversation with certain assumptions, I will now change the assumptions, the premises, because I don't like the fact that I'm losing the argument. That's bullshit, and that's what I was critiquing.
When you get into the nitty-gritties and the complexities of things, that's when it just gets tough sometimes.
Well, I would argue again that the only thing tough is people's meathead, and that what the real problem is there isn't that there's too much reality or that it's too complex. The real problem is that people are raised on the fables. They're raised on fairy stories. They're raised on lies. Perpetual lies. Santa Claus, Easter Rabbit, happily ever after, good will triumph, blah blah, whatever. All these lies. And it's these lies that have turned their brain into a useless gristle. And the truth, honest reality, isn't ungraspable. That every formula has a simple diagrammable relationship. We can understand the relationship. None of it's magic. It's all has an understandable relationship. There's no, it just is that way. No. There is stuff we don't fully understand, but I'm saying most of the stuff that matters, we got it.
Um, so, with definitions, we can make a generalization of what a word means. In general, it'll get most of what's supposed to be included and exclude most of what's not supposed to be excluded. In my last video, I was kind of talking about sky. The other approach is to get a list of necessary and sufficient conditions to exactly describe the word, such that we include the right amount of sky and exclude what's not sky, right? It's like, how far do we have to go?
Well, whatever. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you don't, we could say like a word like freedom. Another bullshit, like just another word that is just a very sloppy word, because freedom implies something. It almost implies, by its very definition, that you're not confined by cause and effect, or you're not confined by pre-existing circumstances. So the real word would be the incarceration. The real word would be confinement or restriction. The white space word. And the freedom word is just the leftover, the remainder. If you don't have restriction, well, then you have freedom. But it's not absolute freedom, so it just doesn't have any absolute meaning. It's not a word that can be absolutely described. It can only be described based on a context of a confinement. But again, having conversation about what is the real world and what is in describing the nature of our existence. I'm just saying you can describe evolution and the process of this evolution of not only our physical body, but of our brain, of our psychology, and then the evolution of our knowledge base. These things can all be described, and you can do it in some silly, mushy way where you say the unicorn put it there, or you can do it in some rational way and say there's a progressive acquisition, a recognition of tendencies and liabilities. And we know that one of the liabilities of this human thing is that if he can figure out a way to lie to make it so he gets all the good stuff and the other guy gets all the shitty stuff, that's what these stupid humans will do.
In the cave, before the air in the cave is not sky. I went into more detail about that in a recent video, so I think I'll leave that there. The thing is, when we're trying to make some necessary and sufficient conditions, we're using words to do it. And so there's this self-referential paradox, and it kind of falls into that generalism kind of thing of what do words generally mean.
Yeah, well, I know, but this is the whole real problem, right? Is nobody wants to have the explicit conversation. So as long as we use idiotic language like love, triumph, some kind of, some kind of bullshit kind of word, then yeah, there's no, you can't have a rational conversation. You can't have an explicit conversation. You have to use real words about efficiency or temperature or value in some sort of way where you explicitly define what it is you're measuring and what kind of ruler you're using to measure it. So you have to confine the discussion to some sort of reference, that is a universal reference or an absolute reference. I mean, if it isn't already universal, you'll have to make it universal by saying this is the context of conversation. I will not indulge in discussion about why unicorns don't exist. I won't waste my time explaining why Bugs Bunny doesn't exist. No, I will not waste my mental energy on some catch-22 bullshit like, well, maybe Bugs Bunny did it. That's a waste of my fucking time. Yeah. Well, so the point is, even though we don't have a good enough language, we can force that better language by recognizing the insufficiency of the language and agreeing that we can put a set of nonsense on the table and say, look, you're not allowed to use nonsense. Religion, bullshit, nonsense. Fuck that shit. Okay, I'm not going to sit there and explain to you why Buddha was full of shit, or why Jeebus is full of shit, or why Mohammed is full of shit. I mean, either you figure that out before we get to the conversation, or you're just going to waste my time.
Is there generally agreed upon meaning, which is problematic. That is subjective, right? Is would be saying like saying most people don't agree with antinatalism, therefore antinatalism is wrong. That's what we. That's exactly the kind of reasoning that we do use for general definitions of words.
What is that? That's not how you define a word based on whether somebody believes the concept itself is true or false. The statement itself is true or false. So that's nonsense. And words are supposed to, again, words are supposed to accurately describe a property, a condition. There's no point in having the word if you're not accurately describing. If you're not doing it right, then you need another word. If the word isn't right, if it isn't an accurate, complete definition, complete enough for the purpose of conversation, then yeah, you need to fix that, or put a sentence where that word is describing why the word's broken. And more accurately describe the concept. If the word is flawed, don't use it.
But again, general definitions of words are not exactly specific. They're general.
I mean, getting back to the free will conversation, the very idea that we're discussing a concept based on some notion of freedom that could not possibly ever be described outside of limitations of cause and effect would be idiotic. And yet we're doing it. Why? Because people came up with a way describing will and throwing the word free in front of it in some erroneous way, as if they are, free to grow wings and fly mentally. That somehow perceptually my brain can do whatever the fuck it invents. Oh, wait a minute. What's it going to invent it out of it? It can't grow wings and fly unless it knows what a wing is and how to make one. Your brain can't do any of this stuff unless something seeds it with the knowledge to do it. So, the word is just garbage. It's just garbage. It's a garbage concept, and we shouldn't even have to waste our time with it. We should just say, what's your definition of free? There's no such thing. There's no such thing. You can't point to a free. Go show me a free somewhere. Show me one.
So, if your claim is that we have to have some claim on absolute truth in order to have a discussion, you're saying, oh, I can't even talk to these people, and that general approximations of truth aren't good enough to be...
Well, that's them. They're the ones that saying these approximations aren't good. You can't change, again, I'm not going to argue this over and over and over, but you can't change the definition of ball or, I don't know, stick or snow or whatever. You can't change its definition in the middle of the conversation. And I'm just saying that's what they're claiming a right to do, and that's the bullshit.
Able to discuss ideas, then you're not acknowledging the infinite complexities of, say, the Mandelbrot set.
Well, again, it's not anything in the real world, so why would I bother acknowledging something that's not real? It's a perversion of reality where the rules of reality aren't obeyed. So why would I waste my time accepting as a condition of existence something that's not a condition of existence? Yeah.
Into when we talk about reasoning and these words and where the limits of meaning. So again, there's a bunch of examples, and I love going through these because people always want examples of contradictions, but there's red and two and cold and different and sweetness and
I don't know how you're going to get past the two thing, the red thing. I just don't know how. I mean, red isn't a specific frequency. You're not going to change that fact. The distance between reds and blues is different. Very different. They're different things.
a flat word we talked about today. I think I'll give the flat word um, its own video. That's an interesting subject right there. But
Yeah, I don't think flat is all that interesting, to tell you the truth. I don't think flat, in ultimate conversation about the real meaning of existence in the universe, I don't think flat is even going to be used in any of the, in the first 1 million pages. I don't think there's any reason to ever use the word flat. It's a pretty uninteresting word.
um, right with like, let's start with two-ness. Okay, so he picks up a couple pencils.
I believe I invented actually the word two-ness. I'm not sure, but I mean, I did invent it in the sense that I did do it without somebody else telling me, hey, use the word two-ness. I did in a video just all of a sudden say two-ness, you know. But I mean, doesn't that just end the conversation? I mean, as soon as you say the ness word, okay, to any conceptual property word, so any property word, as long as you just say massness or blah blah, you've already done it. You've completed the subject now because it's about the ness. It's about the fact that it has it on it. Okay, it's nessing. All right, and there's just no way you're going to undo the idea that when I say two-ness, we know what it is. The two-ness is definitely different than three-ness. No way you could fuck that up. Two-ness is really different than three-ness, and it's really different than 5,000,000-ness. Really, really, really different. Unmistakably different. You can't really fuck that one up. You really can't confuse 1,000,000 and 2.
And he says this is two. But it's only two because he picked up that many. Um,
Yeah, on purpose. That's right, because I know what 2 is, and I picked up 2. Because I wanted to show a 2. I wanted to show two-ness. So yeah, I picked up 2 on purpose. Not by accident, on purpose.
when you assign a number to things, you put them in.
I didn't assign it. I recognized it. I recognized the difference. I recognized that there is a difference, and the difference has meaning and implication. Having 2 is different than 3, and it often will it will make a difference. If I only had one spoke in a wheel, the wheel won't work, right? Because it goes flat. Now, if I have 2 spokes in the wheel, then all of a sudden now the wheel has some hope of being a wheel. And if I have 10 spokes, well, then I have even more hope of having an efficient wheel. That's the implication of these numbers. The differences matter. The differences aren't irrelevant or meaningless. 2 is different than 3, is different than 4. Not only does something have the property of its 2-ness or its 3-ness or its 4-ness, it has the property of now its utility has changed, its function has changed based on the ness-ness. What nesses it has changes its functionality.
Set, and it's you doing it.
Again, you're saying that, and I'm saying no, it's a quality of the thing. I did not make 2 different than 3. I didn't do that. I'm merely recognizing the difference. So I didn't make anything up. I didn't create anything. I didn't do anything except acknowledge something that's real in the world, which is 2 is different than 3.
You know, if I've got 4 pennies on the table, and I start expressing that in two-ness, well, I've got these 2, 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 and I've got these 2. Wow, that's a lot of pennies, right? Now you would want to say that's 4. But it's just because we grouped them in a group of 4. If I've got...
Yeah, but that's the trick of it, isn't it? That's the very point of it, is that two-ness is only two-ness when it's in a context where you can find two-ness. You can't find, if I put 1,000,000 jelly beans in a bucket, I can't find the two-nesses. I won't see two-ness unless there's 2 black ones or 2 something that gives it away that we're 2, we're a pair, we're connected. So if there is no obvious connection, then you won't see that. Now, if we draw lines between we have the 4, and we draw lines between the objects, in different ways, so recognizing the pairs, well, now we can see the two-ness of it. So again, we're describing something that we have to be able to recognize because it has a property that allows it to be recognized. If it isn't manifesting the property, then you wouldn't say it has it. Get it? It has to be manifesting a relationship. If there's two things in the universe, me and Saturn, and yet we have nothing connecting us, no one would recognize us as having two-ness, because we're not connected as two-ness. There's nothing connecting us, therefore there's nothing for us to be recognized as two.
Now, there's also the two-ness of just the number two itself, right? But that's a total abstraction from reality. It's not referring to two things. It's just two.
No, it is referring to two things. So again, I don't see how that's true at all. The number two, if I write the number two, no doubt about it, that represents two-ness. That's the symbol. You could write the word TWO. You could write some other way of saying two, but I'm just saying that two, that symbol, represents this idea, this property. No doubt about it.
Which is just, it's completely abstract.
No, it's completely explicit and completely narrow and completely unconfusable. Two, again, the number two and the word TWO is no way to get that confused with 3, 4, 10, 15, a million. It's completely distinct. It completely defines a certain kind of thing, too, and that's it. It isn't fuck-upable at all.
From reality.
I mean, unless you're an idiot, you just can't get it wrong. I mean, that's why we make jokes about 2 plus 2 equal 4, is because, shit, if you get that wrong, you're really fucking stupid.
So, redness. Now, he's pointing to a shirt and saying, my shirt is red.
I didn't do that.
That's problematic because it's not red, it's brown. Red is a primary color, right? So there's one specific wavelength that is red.
Well, again, so that's kind of playing with the language, isn't it? Because we know for this from the context of most people, they're going to call anything that's dominated by the color red. Okay, I mean, you could sit there and say that any beam of light has some blue in it and some brown in it and some pinks and whatever you want to put in it, you know, some other primary colors. That there's no pure stream of any color ever coming at us in reality. But we all know that's not how we define a color. We define a color by what is its preponderance, what is its substance. So, you know, when I look at this thing here, I'm not sitting there saying this is a brown line. I'm not saying this is a green line because it might have 5% green in it. I wouldn't waste anybody's time doing that kind of nonsense saying, I don't think this is red because it has green in it. No, we just go by the fact that it has this constituent amount of red for it to be reasonably described as red. So, you know, to say that we need this to qualify this and say, well, we call things red because they're 88% red. I mean, come on, this is just bullshit.
And it's like a general description of red would be between 620 and 650 nanometers for its wavelength. Notice how those are both divided.
Well, I guess but again, you're not going to get anything. No, nothing in reality is going to produce just that. You know, unless we build something to do it. And I don't even think the things that we build actually do that. So, I don't think we've ever seen a pure red stream of light.
Divisible by 10, right? We kind of stuck some bars on there. But all of those, except for one specific wavelength, are all brown. They're not really.
Oh, what's the point? Again, what are you rejecting the obvious point here that if it's green or if it's green or red because there's a clear domination by one color versus the other color? I mean, again, there's just absolutely no point in doing that. There's an explicit way to say it. I mean, if you're going to force people to do it, there's an explicit way to qualify these words beforehand and just say, yes, we're going to call these things a general color. It'll fall in the category blue even though it's turquoise. because it has more blueness than greenness or something like that. So we can just have a qualified definition. It's not a problem. The point is the thing itself has an explicit reality, and the words aren't confusable. Blue is not red. You may see it any way you wish to see it. The point is you're going to see the same thing I see, which is something dominated by a certain frequency. I mean, unless your eyes are broken or some other thing. I'm just saying, assuming your eyes work the same way and they're receiving 99% of the light as it comes, we're going to see the same thing. It doesn't matter whether our brain interprets it as the same thing. The point is we're going to see the same thing. The same mathematical, the same energy, the same vibrations are going to impact us. The thing itself doesn't change depending on the person. The thing itself is absolute and is real and is factually, explicitly something. It is not something changed because you perceive it differently.
Red, because red is that primary goodness, right? Those other colors have some blueness in them. And so they're brown. Everything's brown. Everything's got, we see it around the world. This is a little bit of red, this is a little bit of blue, it's got a little bit of yellow, all up in that one little spot. It's a mixture of the primary colors. So yeah.
Quite obviously dominated by a certain mixture, right? So the recipe is always going to be the recipe, though. The recipe that is this doesn't change. All you're talking about is what you're perceiving. So subjectively, okay, is nonsense. The reality isn't subjective. The reality isn't subject to your interpretation. The reality is explicit. It is the same shit coming off of that thing to me that's coming to you. And you can interpret it wrong, you can read it wrong, you can see it wrong, okay, in the same sense that you can see it inconsistently to me. But that doesn't change the fact that it is what it is, okay? And the fact is, it is more blue than red. Fact.
Yeah, we can stick on some arbitrary lines and say, okay, it's between 620 and 750 nanometers for the wavelength, and that's what red is. But again, that's the generally agreed upon definition. It's just generally agreed upon because, well, we've come to an agreement that says this is red.
No, we've come to an agreement that reality produces photons in these range of frequencies, and that's what it does. It does create them. That's what we agree on. Is that in terms of anybody who has any scientific knowledge, they're agreeing on the fact that the photons themselves are not flexible. They are a certain frequency, and that's what they are. And when we identify them and say that's red, it doesn't matter whether we say that's green or blue or pink or anything. We're just saying that that frequency is that frequency. We're just giving it a label instead of saying 500 or 600. That's a 600. You're a mixture of 648 to 792. Instead of saying things in ways that it would be better maybe if we actually did that. If we actually converted to the Celsius scale and we actually did things in a sensible way. But we don't because of heritage. So we have these crude ways of identifying frequency of light. And maybe it's a little childish. And maybe it's not as explicit as we need it to be. But the point is this is not a debatable subject, in my opinion, that the fact that the thing is not subjectively changing. Your subjective interpretation does not change the fact of the thing itself. Your subjective interpretation is either an accurate representation of the reality or an inaccurate representation of the reality.
It's pretty arbitrary.
It's not arbitrary at all, is the point. The truth is not arbitrary. Whether or not we can consistently describe it may be. Language may be arbitrary.
We're talking about trueness of redness. He talks about difference, and he's like, I've got these two pencils. Well, that's another thing about the two-ness, right? With the two pencils, he's sharpened them so that he can write with them. So they're no longer a whole pencil. So to call them two pencils again, it really depends on a lot of subjectivity.
Right, so he's going to tell me that depending on how sharp your pencil is or how short it is, it's not a pencil. I mean, what the fuck? So is anybody supposed to take that seriously? So, hey, I'm a 6 foot human, so I guess all humans should be 6'1". So all humans who are less than 6'1" aren't human, and all humans above 6'1" aren't human. I mean, that would just be, like, silly. Like, really silly. No, that was a bad effort. Bad inventive. Yeah, you really farted on that one.
And I'm sorry, that's just how it is. You know, it's not like I'm doing.
I don't care whether you call them pencils. I don't care whether you call them anal probes. I don't care whether you call them nose plugs. I don't give a fuck what you call them. The fact is, there was 2 of them. So this is just so fucking stupid, all right? The concept is, right? Like whatever that show was, right? If we're talking about two-ness, fucker, we're not talking about pencilism, you know, pencilness. And so you have some theory of pencilness where, you know, a pencil isn't a pencil if it's too short. Okay, fine. I don't give a fuck, but it has nothing to do with the subject. So you're off the subject.
Doing this to you. Okay. But he talks about the 2 pencils being different, right? Because they're not located spatially in the same spot. But not all things that are one thing are located spatially in the same spot, right?
It can't be. The point I was making, and I think I made it, so I really shouldn't have to make it again, is that this pencil is clearly not this pencil. Yeah, they are not the same pencil. We can notice that they're not. It's written all over the... Oh, it's one of those... what do you call it? Yeah, self-evident truths.
Such as poverty.
Axiomatic.
Poverty is kind of here, it's here, it's here, it's here. It's all kind of one thing.
Well, poverty is kind of a silly word. That's why they had to come up with some kind of notion like poverty line. You know, so they try to describe what exactly, well, you fall below this line, then you're a poverty. And when you're above the line, you're not a poverty. Okay. But it's kind of a silly word.
You know, there's Bose-Einstein condensates, which again, that's quantum physics, but it's some particle that it's in a bunch of different spaces all at one time.
Yeah, well, sorry, that's not a fact. It's just complete crap. I don't think there's any evidence of that, any empirical evidence, any real evidence, any substantial evidence. None of that. No. Not proven. Not even close to proven. Not even close to being proven.
I don't know. I don't like to talk about that quantum physics stuff, but it seems to come up, you know, like, that's a good example.
Yeah, right, because of people who want a loophole. They want to escape. They want a reality escape hatch. So they put a Q on everything and just say, well, there's my quantum escape hatch. I feel better now because I have a quantum escape hatch.
Thanks for that. Right, so he's saying these 2 pencils are different because their spatialness. Even though they're both pencils, they're both made out of wood. They both have the purpose of writing. There's a lot of sameness to them.
That's right. But it's not that they are the same pencil. So the point is that's just an illustration how you got to be careful how you use the words. So there's an explicit way to describe their individuality, and then there's a sloppy way where you don't get to their individuality. But the point is that there's just no doubt, okay, that we can know for all time that these 2 things are 2 things. They're never not going to be something that was this is different information than this. Period. They're not the same bit. They're not the same byte of information. They are a different byte of information. And they always will be. Their substance will not become unsubstance. Ever. They have it. They have properties. The properties existed. You're not going to be able to undo them. They're not going away. I mean, they'll obviously be turned into something else in the future, cockroach ass or something, but they won't be pencils at some time in the future. But what they are now will never change.
But in the idea of spatiality, they're in different places. They're two different pencils. I mean, provisionally, we can totally agree to that. Um, but
Provisionally, why should I be? Well, again, why should we be provisional about it? I'm just saying, this is the bullshit. I need a provisional escape hatch. Well, I'm not going to give it to you. I'm not going to have a conversation with somebody who's going to keep saying, but if that means I have to pay $50, I don't want to. No, no, I ain't playing by the rules. If playing by the rules means if I land on the space that say you lose, I lose. Well, and I go, no, I'm not going to. I'm provisionally going to play Monopoly, and the provision is I win, and I get all the money, and you lose all your money. Fuck you and your provisions.
his whole argument, right, or part of his argument, is about the same thing that we went into a few months ago about should I treat something that's not in the same spatial spot as me as the same because I recognize its sentience. Right? So what I'm
Quite obviously, when I said this pencil and this pencil are not the same pencil, I wasn't saying that they aren't both pencils, was I? No, I wasn't.
saying is that inmendham is the one that sets these goalposts and then sets them where he wants to be for his argument. Um,
Well, yeah, well, you want to make a video explaining how the fuck you can qualitatively make some sort of diagram or explanation how it could possibly matter whether somebody's golden retriever is happy playing ball or somebody's boxer is happy playing ball. I mean, how it would matter which one of those dogs is happy. Just in a general sense, assuming they're all healthy, assuming everything's going to be the same about every other aspect of their life, except for the fact that you've identified one dog as being this dog and one dog being that dog. Explain to me how it could possibly make a difference. Oh, that's right, you can't do that, because that would be silly. That's right.
he has decided which words have meaning, like love and happiness. He's like, oh, love, that has no meaning, but this other word, value, I'm going to assign some meaning to it, even though there's nobody that's doing.
Well, value is essentially a concept where something stupid like love has no conceptual definition. So yes, the notion of value is definable in the sense that it is a thing, an idea, a concept of proportionality, of weight, of mass as substantive, meaningful, relevant, important. Yeah. Value describes importantness.
The valuing. Um, right, so if I'm trying to use an axiom like happiness exists, then you want.
Well, whatever. It's a silly axiom. Farting exists. Well, wow, that says so much, doesn't it? No, it doesn't say a damn thing.
To start questioning it, right? If the axiom is the shirt is red, and I want to start questioning it, then he's like, no, what? You don't even use words anymore. If I want to say happiness exists, then he wants to start getting into the nitty-gritty details, right? And that's important to do in all cases, to explore the paradox, to get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, learn more and more and more. Again, I value completeness over consistency.
I don't even know what that means. Completeness. Frankly, when you're going to make it up and when you're going to use vernacular like happiness and say, well, yeah, we'll be able to come up with a really nicely defined description of what that concept is. Oh, I don't think so. Am I happy now? Was I happy 10 minutes ago? Was I happy an hour ago? I don't know. Did I fall into the bucket of happy? I don't have a brain tumor right now, as far as I know. I'm sort of happy about that. So I guess I'm happy. Yeah.
I want to know more. I want to keep diving into all these little shapes and see
Well, again, I'll just inform you again, this is an abstraction that has no connection to anything real in the universe. Nothing in the real universe works like this. This is a fake. It's a non-real circumstance that cannot permeate or exist in actual reality. You have to synthesize it with mechanisms to create it as an artificial thing, because it cannot exist in reality on its own without being contrived by, some neural network that sees some purpose in making things that have no relevance to reality and going, ooh, ah, isn't reality cool, when it's not really reality. I can draw a picture of Goldilocks, and I can have her sit down with the three bears and discuss ethics. But it wouldn't be real. It never happened. It would be a story. A fake story.
What's going on there? So without exploring the details, in Inmendham's argument, we've basically going straight from premise.
Nah, what's up, Doc? Yeah. That's all, folks. I can make up lots of shit that just isn't real.
To conclusion and say, like, sentience has value, therefore we should destroy it. Right? That's pretty...
Well, whatever. Yeah. Fair cop? No, I don't think so. Suffering has value, therefore we should prevent it. Yeah, that's a good one.
Victory until we start exploring...
No. You do seem a little bit explory. Yeah. I'm exploring!
So...
Explory, the wonder explorer! Yay! Yay! Exploring!
Right, when I did get to talk to him briefly in the room, he was talking about wanting to value, like, a show that talks about curing cancer more than a show that shows football. And obviously we see a lot more football than we used to see shows about cancer, right? And I was like, well, but you said it's not about the thing that is being valued. That there's some intrinsic value to it, but it's not the desires of the people.
I sort of made he's really fucking this part up, but it's making videos is tough. I just haven't been good at it, right? He's just making a distinction between the idea of projected value, like there would be value in people being pleased by watching football, and my simple argument was, since football is just a contrivance of culture, and it's an acquired addiction, it's not an innate addiction, it's not like sex or food or air or something. It's one of those things that we could want or desire any kind of soap opera. So we could like Goldilocks, or we could like Little Red Riding Hood. And the truth is that if we like Little Red Riding Hood, cancer gets cured, right? And if we like Goldilocks, a bunch of time gets wasted. So the point is that if we're going to choose to be vicariously enthralled by a story, we ought to pick the story that actually cures cancer rather than the story that just wastes time. That's all.
People, it's not that they desire it.